Hey there, listeners. Just a heads up, this episode might dive into some heavy stuff like rape, sexual assault, suicide, violence, or drugs. We want you to know that these are tough topics and it's totally okay to skip this one if you're not up for it. Remember, we're not experts, we're just here to share stories and start conversations. If you or someone you know needs help, reach out to a professional or call a helpline. Take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, this is Justine, your host of Mentally a Badass. What is up, mother duckers? This is your mentally unstable girl, Justine, the host of Mentally a Badass. Hello, Jessica. Welcome back again for the third time.
Hello, Justine. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes, and we have upgraded you to now you are considered co-host for this series. You know you're not a guest right now, right?
I'm a co-host
For this series, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So exciting.
No, it's true. We now have our own little mini series because me and Jessica, we just love talking. So we just felt like, why not? And we have a lot to say. Like that one episode was just not enough. We have a lot more we want to talk about when it comes to working together in that particular company. So she's a co-host now, meaning that she can run this conversation as well and lead.
Okay. Yes. Co-hosts stepping into that. Great. Yeah, I'm ready.
I realized we never had this conversation until now.
That's okay.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about my personal experience working for said company. And before we got on here, Jessica was like, I want to know the unfiltered version of your experience because, you know, when I was your boss, you're obviously not going to, you have to filter things out. You're not going to be completely honest of what you went through. She wants me to kind of like spill the tea today. So Jessica, I'm going to let you ask me some questions today.
Yeah. So last time we met for the last episode that we did, we talked a lot about my experiences like related to workplace trauma and what led to me deciding to step away from that job and the state of like the collective mental health. And I used to hear from other people on my team. So this would have been like your peer group that just like everyone was struggling with like mental health and feeling anxious and just sad and like not happy at in their jobs. So I just wanted to know what, like you said, spill the tea. Tell me like what you guys talked about. Like what was like the collective mental health feeling? I would say like maybe when you started versus like when you left, like how did you feel? I think you asked me the same question. Like, how did you feel when you first started versus like when you decided to step away from the job and like what led to that shift? Because I think if there were like red flags or signs along the way that could help somebody else realize like maybe, oh, hey, I'm experiencing this. Maybe I need to open my eyes and like consider a new job or like what led to that shift for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And then I'm actually going to mix in some of my like own personal trauma because over the time I was wondering why certain things affected me more than others. Yeah, I love Brad.
Yeah, me
he
too.
saved me.
Yeah.
You probably didn't even know about this.
Yeah,
because you're in boss mode and not in peer mode. When did Brad come into the picture? So I started in 2018, right? Do you remember when you hired Brad?
I do not. It was some time, like hired him on to the team originally.
Yeah.
Like, because he came in as like like the same as you, and then he was promoted.
I remember he was like a temp thing. What do you guys call that? I forgot.
I don't think he was.
It was kind of like a TA.
Yeah,
I think it was a TA.
I don't know. I don't remember. But it would have been 2017 or 2018.
Oh, I came in 2018. I think it was.
Was he already in his like promoted position?
Let's just say he came like 5 months after, sure.
Okay.
Let's just say that. So, okay. So to say the first year was fine for me, because you know naturally you're excited, everything's fresh, but with we mentioned like the whole childhood wound thing. This is what I learned recently about like CPTSD. So the job that that we worked in is you need to kind of have like tough skin because people are going to be yelling at you. They're going to be targeting you. They're going to be doing anything to get you down because they want to get what they want. Like that was a huge thing that we had to deal with, and you have to be strong during that and also not let it get to you. And then so I've had childhood wounds where I like, got grown up constantly getting yelled at, constantly being bullied. Like that's something that I, was traumatized with. And going into this job in reality is probably was not good for my mental health. It's probably like the job that I should have stayed away from. But at that time, I felt that I was like healed. Like I did a lot of like inner work. But then once I went to that job, like everything started flaring, and it was really hard to use my coping, my skills, my coping mechanisms and such. So the first year I was fine, but then once everything switched and then they, we had more back-to-back calls and people were getting like nastier, that's when it was just getting hard for me to go to work. I remember that I literally would cry like in my shower. Like when I wake up, I'll go shower and I would just like have a mental breakdown. Like I would just cry and I'm just like, I do not want to go. Like I feel like I physically cannot go. And so I had a lot of those mornings, which, no one should have to wake up and have a mental breakdown like right before work.
Or like dread having to go into work.
Yeah. And
because it's going to bring so much stress. Just to interrupt you just for a second, for context, you worked in a call center or a contact center. And so you were answering phone calls for the majority of your day.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing too is like it's being yelled at was part of the pie, the equation that made it hard for me. And one of the other things was I felt like a rat. I felt like
the irony.
Yeah, no, for real. And then like, obviously you didn't make the rules, but you had to obviously enforce the rules when it came to like numbers, right?
Yeah.
So like a human being shouldn't have to go from call to call to call to call. Like they need time to like process what just happened, especially if you got off a bad call and they're like screaming at you and there's like naturally a person's going to get upset. So you need some time to process. And they did have like, a button where you can actually a button that it's not to process how you felt. It's just to finish up your notes.
Well, and I think that's part of the job. It's like the job is designed in that way. Like I've never worked in a call center before I worked like, in that job. So I don't have a great frame of reference, but for whatever reason, it's like call centers are designed in that way where it's like you're burning and churning calls. Like you're just trying to get people out of the queue, get people off hold. And I think like the powers that be just assume that you're not going to need a minute because you're not going to take like you're just going to keep moving on. Like you're not going to take it personally. You're just going to like I said, like what's the phrase, like turn them and burn them or whatever.
Turn them and burn them. I mean, I definitely got burned. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And so I think like for anybody who did like who wasn't treated like a human during an interaction, anyone who needed a minute, it was like, well, you shouldn't need a minute. Like this is a call center. Like come on, keep going.
Like we're trying to milk every second of your hourly. Like we're paying you this. You need to work every single minute.
Yeah, it was extremely, I don't know what the right word, like structured. Like every single minute is accounted for, which that's, from what I understand, very typical in a call center. But not at like, I don't know anybody who can, you have to like have this super thick skin or like create like this callus around, become like hardened to that and not take it personally, which if you struggle with, like what you were saying with like anybody who has like PTSD,
which I didn't even know I had PTSD. Okay, so I have PTSD medical wise, but I have CPTSD like overall, and I didn't even know that existed.
And what does that stand for?
Complex trauma. So it's like instead of post-traumatic stress disorder, it's complex.
Oh, okay.
So basically the main difference is like PTSD is like when one horrible event happens to you and it like pretty much haunts you, while CPTSD is more minor, where it's constantly a different thing, like constantly something. Like for me, it pretty much I get started in like maybe third grade with the bullying, and then high school, and then college, and then work, and it's like I constantly have been like, even though like it's not like I got like raped or shot or anything like that, but just when it's when you're in constant stress. And so that's what my therapist says. She says that I have CPTSD, and I'm like, you know what, that actually makes a lot of sense. So it's just like I have like all these like wounds that I never, which I thought I did, but I never really moved past it. I actually connected with another therapist on Instagram who actually specializes in that. So if you're interested in like hearing more about CPTSD, it's the episode, I'm trying to remember the exact, I think it was Understanding CPTSD with therapist Olivia Lima. And it's actually like only, I think it's actually like 2 episodes before it, our other episode. So yeah, we go more into it. And so basically the way she explained it is like, think of it as like, I guess you got like a cut and then it never like really fully healed. And so it's still like, it's still there and it's still like what like sensitive. So, and the thing about just constantly keep hurting it. So that's what
actually heals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just like so basically if something that may not seem like a huge deal may be more of a big deal to me because I like don't like I'm already in pain, so it's adding more pain to it.
And I think this is something that is missed a lot when it comes to mental health in the workplace and like something that could be considered a disability.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about it, a lot of jobs offer accommodations for physical disabilities. And I saw that happening a lot to your peer group. But something like this, which I mean, I understand at the time when you joined my team, you didn't have that diagnosis yet. So you weren't even probably aware of it.
The CPTSD part, but I did have a bipolar diagnosis. So I already knew I had mental health problems, but don't want it to like keep me away from opportunities. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's so misleading to work for a company that where you think like, oh, this job is going to be like this, and this, and then you get into the job and you're like, but wait, this is just a call center. I could do this work at any other company that has a call center. You know what I mean? Like a lot of companies have a way to like make the job seem fancier or more frilly and exciting than what it actually is. You know, it's a call center. Like if you can handle, like if you're not willing to accept, I don't want to say handle, that's a bad way to put it because I don't think it has to do with anyone's capacity to handle the work. I think that if you don't want to put up with people like being rude and mean to you and yelling at you all day, because many people like I don't actually know anybody who would want to put themselves in that position.
Yeah, I know, right? It's also just like the money too, like not even worth it. Like the pay is not that considering what we went through.
And I think about some of the people on the team who, and I'm sure this is true in a lot of different work environments. You have people who have been around for years, who have been in the job for many, many, many years. And then you have people who are brand new coming in. The older folks or the folks who have more experience, they have seen the business shift. And I think that the way that customers are willing to talk to people over the phone, I think we talked about this in the last episode, that like disembodiment of like, you're just talking to somebody over the phone. You're not physically in front of somebody face to face. The level I believe has shifted in the last, I would say even the last 10 years. And people are just not willing to show as much kindness and courtesy. Like they just feel like I'm just going to be rude and mean and get what I need. And essentially like bully the person on the other line to give me what I need. Yeah, there's just there's like a lack of respect.
And we can like literally, if we have time on this, like just talk about certain stories because like I still remember a lot of different scenarios that I can totally bring up. But getting to the point where I'm trying to think of what was I at before?
Well, I originally had asked you like how you felt starting in the job versus like the red flags that kind of led you to leaving. You were talking about Brad.
Yes. So Brad was literally my rock. Like honestly, I literally would say like, oh, Brad like saved my life, and he probably did, honestly, because when I was going through all of what I was, obviously you weren't really as aware because you're my boss, and in the beginning we just had like the boss and employee relationship. We didn't have like what we have now, and then what we have, in the middle of the pandemic, like. When I was like not showing up to work and such, like he would text me. He would be like, "Are you okay?" Like he will always check up on me, like all the time.
Yeah.
And then he'll be the person that I would like always vent to. So, and I felt comfortable, you know, talking to him, and I felt like he was really like the only one who really like fully understood me. I mean, you know that like of course I've had like friends in the team and such, but he was really like the person that like really understood me. And I think it's because like he probably has his own like, you know, challenges. But the thing with Brad is that I feel like he just comes off like so strong. I mean, I'm sure he is. I don't know. Like he doesn't flinch when someone just like curses him out. Like he's just like whatever. You know what I mean? But I think I'm not gonna say attracted to him. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. But like I think like when it comes like friend wise, like what like attracted me to him is like hearing the way he would handle calls. Like he would always just. Do you remember the way that he would handle calls? He had like a whole literally like a different persona. Yeah. And just the way he answered, and it just, I think that's like kind of what caught my eye, and I was like, oh my god, like how does he do that, you know? And I think he was only like right behind me, and that's when we just started, you know, chatting and such. And he was really, like I said, like the person that kept me going off the rails, because like even though it sucked going to that job, at least I had him. And like I said, it really meant a lot when he would always check up on me.
Yeah.
Because I think that he really thought I would off myself. I mean, honestly, who knows? It was a pretty dark moment. Hello, mother duckers. Pausing the podcast here because I have a lot to say, a lot of announcements here. So giddy up, let's go. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. If you're on Spotify, leave us a rating. And if you're on YouTube, leave us a comment. Tell us what you like or tell us what you fucking hate. But also be a little nice because I don't feel like crying in the corner tonight. Second, we have a clothing line. Yes, clothing line where we have unique designs by our co-founder, Ariel. And lastly, if you want us to slide into your emails, we have a monthly newsletter. So everything is in the description. Go ahead and take a look. And yeah, let's get back to the show. No,
I didn't know he was reaching out to you. That's really, so this was before he was promoted, right?
Yes. He was like pretty much like my best friend through everything, like literally my rock. And I know that kind of sounds very like romantic.
No, it doesn't. It sounds like he was a really good friend and it was a good colleague. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was so great. And he's still like, I mean, he doesn't like really talk to me as much till like today. I mean, I like reach out to him. Well, recently I was talking to him a little bit, but that was because I had like questions about Horror Night. And then I actually did audition for it. I still haven't heard back.
You did?
Yeah, I haven't heard back yet. So that's
What'd you audition like for? What? Scare actor? So you don't like, so they would just place you in one of the zones?
Yeah, pretty much. But I've always wanted to do it, but I couldn't do in the past. But anyway, but he did say to me before I auditioned, he was like, "Oh, just letting you know, like it can be, you know, a lot and stressful, and people can be like, you know, like really rude and mean and such." So he said that because he knows how I can get. Like he knows that my brain can just go into a whole spiral and dark moment. But I did say to him, I was like, okay, yeah, no, I obviously know that it's not going to be like, oh yay, I'm expecting that. But the thing is like I can handle a certain amount. I feel like if it's, you know, let's say in the middle of what I hate, right, at least I know it's gonna be over. Like the thing is that the difference is like that's seasonal. What I was in before was just like constant. It's like there's no like ending to this.
Yeah.
And I was like trying to look for other jobs, and it just like wasn't working out. So yeah, so like I feel like he does like really, you know, care. And I think that's just it just meant a lot. And the fact that I'm like talking about this on a podcast, like you can tell like it really meant so much to me. You know, I really wish that him and I were close still.
You can make that happen.
I tried. It didn't work. I think it's just he made some new friends, and I think it's more actually no, I think it was more ever since he got promoted.
There's a level of like,
I think that had a lot to do with it. I think it started a lot more there when he got promoted, and I think I'm just so used to us being us, and then he kind of distanced himself a lot from me, and it honestly like put me in a spiral. Not in a spiral. Okay, I'm being dramatic. I was like wondering, I was like, why is he like not like, I don't know, like, he doesn't, like, he didn't text me anymore. Like, if I wouldn't show up to work, he would not text me anymore.
Mm.
And I just felt like I'm like, in my head, my brain was like kind of going crazy, just gonna have abandonment issues. So I'm out here thinking, like, what did I do wrong? Like, why does he hate me?
I think that we can kind of, maybe not the part you just said, but like the fact that you had a coworker who had such a significant impact on your experience and who
Yeah.
made you feel supported. I think that's something that can make or break your experience at work, is if you feel like you
Yeah.
have a good support system, if you have somebody that you can, even if it's just one person,
Right.
like your work bestie. You know,
Mhm.
how many TikToks do you see where it's like, work is burning down and me and my work bestie are just out
Yeah.
here vibing, like trying to get through the day. You know, like that's what it's about. It's like if you
Yeah.
have just a couple people that you look forward to spending time with during your
Yeah.
workday, that can literally change your experience. So, do you feel like you would have gotten through the first couple of years in the job with him checking on you and supporting you and offering you like that level of feeling of like, hey, I have a friend, I have someone who I can lean on?
That's a good question. So the thing is, like, honestly, I have to pay bills. You don't really have a choice. And I was like, that I was applying for a bunch of things and I was trying to get out. But if you're asking in like a dark area, I mean, I don't think I would have done anything. Like, I wasn't at that point. I know that if I do get to that point, I go back on my meds because that's like what helps me. But another thing too I want to talk about is I feel like me and Brad, like, I don't know. I guess he meant more to me than I meant to him. Like,
I think he probably was just trying to be a good person and a good friend and a
yeah,
good coworker.
it's like a therapy
Needed
session.
the support. Yeah. I mean, hey.
Have you heard of? Sorry, I want to jump into this before I forget. Have you So I'm also diagnosed with borderline personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of this thing called a favorite person?
Yes, because one of my best friends has the person. What did you call it?
Favorite person?
No, the actual.
Borderline personality disorder.
Yeah, I think that's what he has. One of my best friends has that, and I think he mentioned that like he struggles with feeling like someone is not giving enough attention to him. Where he was down visiting me, he lives out of state now, so he was visiting me, and he brought along one of his really good friends from back home.
Yeah.
And we ended up like we were hanging out together in a big group, and I had never met his friend before, and we ended up like hitting it off, and like he became kind of like the star of the show. Like he was like the entertainer of the group. He was funny. We all really liked spending time with him. And then my best friend started to feel like kind of jealous, and he got like really angry, and he got angry at me, and he got really cranky and kind of like removed himself from the group setting, even though like he and I had been friends for a long time. He ended up getting diagnosed a couple years later, and he called me and he's like, listen, this is weighing heavily on me. Like, you probably forgot this even happened, but I perceived that as like you liking him more than you like me.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't have your full attentions. I interpreted that as like, you don't want to be my friend anymore. And like,
Oh my God,
you know
I
what
have
I
a
mean?
lot to say right now.
Yeah. So, and I was like, oh my God, no, because like, you're my best friend. This is the first time I met this guy. Like, I don't have the background with him. You and I have been through some stuff. Like,
Yeah.
he's never going to come in and like replace you. But
Right.
he was receiving the interactions as like, oh, everyone likes him more than me. And he started like in the moment, he was really mean to me. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, what is your problem? And he was, I don't want to talk to you. Like, you like him more than me. Like, go be his friend instead. And then years
Wait,
like
how? And
went
this
by.
was how old you guys? An adulthood, I'm
Oh
assuming.
yeah, this was just this was right before. This is probably 2018,
I
2019.
think, I think that, I mean, I used to be like that, like in high school or maybe early college, and that was before I knew what BPD was. I used to have like a favorite person as well, like multiple times, and if I saw like this person was giving more attention to the person, I would like flip out.
Mhm.
I don't think I would flip out on the person. I think I would take it out like internally, and my therapist did say like I had quiet BPD. Well, not had, I do have quiet BPD. So instead of me lashing on somebody, I lash on myself. And I
Yeah.
internally do that. So now, like, listening to what you said, I mean, I kind of like hope it doesn't listen, but also, I don't know, like, I'm gonna be saying a lot of deep stuff here. So, confirming what you were saying, I really think that he was my favorite person at that time.
Yeah.
I think that because we did have a moment where he was like, he made this like new friends from Horror Night, and he was like giving so much attention to that person like he used to me. He still does to today. And it sounds horrible.
Like maybe I don't know enough about the favorite person.
Oh, I could explain it to you.
Well, but like I'm just like maybe he interpreted your friendship one way and you interpreted it another way.
I mean, what was going through my brain was considered abnormal because, like I said, I have quiet BPD. So the stuff that was going to my brain, I wasn't really like saying it out loud. I mean, right now I kind of am, and I like we're kind of in a therapy session right now. So pretty much like the way the favorite person works is like your brain like attaches themselves to that particular person. So that person is like you need that person, and if there's like any like chance of them leaving, you completely like lose it. And so I think it's also attached to the whole abandonment issues. And so I think it's like he was my favorite person because like I felt like he understood me on a deeper level than like other peers.
And you felt vulnerable because you were stressed out at work and
I felt comfortable. I feel like it's actually I feel like it's really hard to explain.
Yeah.
And especially
it
since
sounds very complex.
I feel like the way I'm talking, I feel like usually it's like, oh, this person is like you dated them or something. It's not like that. Like him and I never like had that kind of relationship, but it's like I felt like not that I like, oh, I needed him, but it's just I you know what someone's a favorite person when this person starts distancing and not being as close to you, and it actually like really like hurts you in the inside. And the sad thing is that I don't think he knew that because I wasn't like I said, this is the whole internal thing that comes in. I like you said that your friend was like basically saying, oh, this and mad at you and such, right? But in my head I wasn't like mad at him. I was mad at the whole situation. I was like getting frustrated internally, and like the person that he gave like a lot of attention to, I mean, I don't want to say I disliked her. I don't know the girl, obviously. He started becoming close to this person, and the promotion, it's like I didn't exist anymore. And like that killed me. I felt like he was distancing him. Like, I mean, he realized he was. Like, I was saying first that it just started with just like, oh yeah, like he got promoted, and it's just like, life happens, right? But then like when every time I'm like, I totally get if people just stop talking and naturally that happens. But like I tried to reconnect and try to like, hang out and and try to become close again because I really truly like missed it. But he wasn't making the same effort. So that's where I'm just like, what did I do wrong? And then I would even like text him and say to him, be like, I miss how close we used to be. And like I don't remember like what he said back, but like for some reason like we can never connect like that again. And I just like in my head I'm just like still today don't really like understand it unless like I said unless he just moved on to another person to I don't know. But
so do you think that shift in your friendship impacted how you ended up feeling about the job in the end? Because I know like 100%. It kind of sounds like it kind of was all downhill from there.
Yeah, I guess I felt abandoned. I guess like I don't like obviously I don't believe he did that on purpose to like hurt me, but I think I felt a sense of abandonment. I did start feeling more alone. I don't like that. I'm like getting emotional.
Oh, my headphones just saying sorry. That just goes to show you, like, if you think about how important it is, this is an interesting dichotomy because we talked a lot in our last episode about the importance of having flexibility at work between like having a hybrid workspace, right? Like working virtually versus working in the office. And one of the big aspects we talked about was how like when it comes to setting boundaries with your work and like work is just work, like not going above and beyond that unless you want to, like that kind of involves your relationship with your coworkers too. And yet the experience that you had with Brad, like seriously made or break Brad. Yeah. Because it made or what make or break. I don't know.
He was like my lifeline.
But that like that whole experience with him seriously impacted how you felt about your job as a whole. Like, I wonder what that would have looked like if you worked in a fully virtual environment. I wonder if there's going to be, I mean, I'm sure like I work in a 100% remote team. I've never met any of my coworkers in person at all. And I have one that I talk to on Teams, like via chat every single day. And I have other coworkers who I talk to like once a month, and so like you develop relationships virtually, but nothing as close as like what you are describing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wonder how your experience would have been if you would have worked in a fully remote environment. Like, it just is, I'm just thinking back to kind of like connect this together. It's just an interesting, like, like dichotomy between what we were talking about before when it comes to like boundary setting and like having a personal life outside of work versus like when you are working in the office and you're spending so much time with coworkers, you're like trauma bonding.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so I feel like you really leaned on your coworkers to support you and get you through like your day to day. But do you feel like you learned a lesson from that? Do you think you would in the future, like if you were to rejoin a job where you had to be in a big corporate setting, you're in an office, maybe not necessarily in a call center, do you think you would allow yourself to bond with a coworker and get close to somebody like that again? Because that could be like a red flag to, or not maybe a red flag, but that could be like an indicator for other people listening, like who are struggling with their mental health at work. Like I hear a lot about people like not wanting to connect with their coworkers because they're just coworkers. They're not
Right.
a friend. Like we can be friendly with each other at work,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'm not going to be like spending my free time with you outside of work. I hear that a lot. And I don't know if it's just because I work
I do
remotely.
too, and I don't agree with it.
Yeah, because I think I don't know what's shifted since pre-pandemic to now. You know what I mean? Like that difference in perspective and in generations. So, people view their work life differently than their personal life now.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I don't want to take away from your story.
Oh no,
Please continue.
where was I going with this? I kind of forgot. But I think you did ask me if I would go back to that, like if I would connect with coworkers if I went back to that setting. And I would say yes, just because the way my brain is, like it's gonna sound freaking crazy. It would just look out for its next favorite person.
I mean,
yeah. My brain just does that. It's like thing is, it's like it's crazy because it subconsciously does that.
Yeah.
Like honestly, today is the day that I realized he was my favorite person. This whole time, all of these years, never like, oh my god, just thinking about right now, like
we have a breakthrough today.
I also just like realized I hope Regan's only hearing like the whole start to finish and not that like not being like, oh, who is she talking about? Who's this guy?
I mean, it's like I'm just thinking back about anyone who's listening who might be experiencing the same thing or who struggles with like a similar diagnosis. Like I've never really heard about this before. This is my first time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have I told you, I have one friend who's shared some things with me about it, and like this whole time you and I were working together, I had no idea you were going through any of that,
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't go into our one-on-ones being like, Brad left me, Brad abandoned me. Jessica, can you do something about it, please?
I remember something in my memory is like, I remember hearing that this was going on.
What?
Like, yeah, maybe you did talk to me about it a little bit. I don't know who else would have heard it.
Maybe.
Going back to the first question I asked you about red flags that led you to want to step away from your job, or red flags that led you to think like, I need to maybe reconsider field of choice, like my career of choice, or consider setting better boundaries so that this work is not leaking into my personal life. Could you tell us one story, one situation that made you be like, I cannot do this job anymore? Like this is becoming an issue. Because I feel like if someone else was going through something where they're just feeling where they need to come home at the end of the day after work and sit and stare at a wall because they're just so burnt out, maybe if they can hear about something that you went through that led to that, it would provide validation. So tell me about a time. Tell me about a time when.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a particular situation, but I would just say when I knew that I couldn't do this anymore was because I was sleeping till like 6 p.m. Like I was not going to work. I was like I mean, you know this. I was calling in like once a week. I was showing up late to work all the time. If you didn't suggest that I do FMLA, like who knows? Like you would have fired me in like a month later or something like that. But FMLA is like kept me going because it like literally physically could not get to work. Like I was so depressed. And then as I was going through this, I'm going through so much shit right now. And it's like, I was actually getting to the point where I was like having such mental breakdowns that I was like screaming at God. Like I felt so trapped. I felt like my soul was crushed. It was like so bad. So at first when this was happening and I was like not calling in as much, it would come like once in a while I would call in, right? But then it started getting worse and worse and worse. And the fact that I was sleeping till 6 p.m. I even had to have like Cheez-Its next to me by my bed because I couldn't even have the energy to go to the kitchen. Like
Wow.
that's how bad it was. And
Yeah.
luckily my bathroom is in my room because honestly, like I mean I would still use the bathroom because naturally you have to go. But that would be like the only reason I get to bed. Like I literally wouldn't obviously go to the kitchen. I would always have to order Uber Eats and to get food to my door. And luckily the door was like right there. Like I was also like losing a lot of money because one, I'm not getting paid. Two, I'm spending money on food delivery, right? And you know what I did after one of the years when I looked at my like taxes and such, I lost over $2,000 in pay
Wow.
because
Yeah.
of that.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah, so like my mental health literally cost me over $2,000. And then also like if you that's just losing money. Like you think about like prescriptions and going to therapy and this and that. Like that all adds up. And another thing too is like I wasted so much time of my life just laying in bed. Like I can tell you it was over 2000. I only knew that because you can look at like the pay and how many hours and you can kind of like do your numbers there. But when it comes to like how much time I've wasted in bed,
Mm.
it's like I felt like I literally lost a huge portion of my life. And now, luckily, I don't do this anymore. I get out of bed. Like, even if I have days where I'm like super depressed, I still get out of bed before noon. Well, before it's like I literally would just be dead to the world. Like, I would not talk to anybody. I wouldn't text anybody. I wouldn't even go on social media. I would literally just be in my bed in the darkness. So since it was getting worse, 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 and worse, and I knew that it was my bipolar symptoms flaring because with bipolar you can be obviously manic and then going to a depressive episode. So stress is the main thing that causes flare-ups, and the job was extremely stressful. So since I was constantly under consistent stress every single day and then also overtime hours, I was like, my bipolar was getting worse, 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 and worse. And so I had to go on medication because when it kept going, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get to the point where I want to like literally die. So luckily, like that medication does a great job of taking the edge off. That's literally what medication's for. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting to the point where how I felt like when I was a teenager. And like I literally was like having these thoughts and actually considering it. So I was like, okay, I need to go back on my meds because this is dangerous. And it's
Wow.
crazy how a job like that was making me get to that level. And I'm just like so thankful that I was able to get out of it because like honestly I was literally just like spending so many times like crying on the floor, screaming to God, like having wondering why I'm stuck here. And I just kept saying to myself, I'm gonna get through it, we all go through hard time. And it was like years and years, and I'm like, why can't I get out of this like trap? And I'm like, what is going on? Like I feel like I'm completely wasting my life here. And I was like, okay, well when I do get out of it, like this is going to be something I'm going to talk about because obviously I couldn't talk about it then or I would probably get fired. I couldn't talk about it publicly, but like now it's like I can actually talk about what I went through.
Well, it takes a while to process it too.
True.
Because
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I think you kind of explained it, but I was going to ask you if you were feeling the way that you were feeling where you're just in bed all day long because you were dreading
Mhm.
either a situation or a person, that you might experience at work. But it sounds like you were just so stressed out from the work that you'd already done that it was making your symptoms flare. So, I mean, I'm sure you will probably were dreading having to go in and expose yourself to that.
Yeah.
But stress, people underestimate how impactful stress can be and like the release of cortisol and like your
Yeah.
hormones becoming imbalanced. Stress literally bleeds into every aspect of your physical and mental well-being. It disrupts your immune system, it disrupts your nervous system. It oh my God, there are so many things that we're even just now getting studies on, in like the medical scientific communities on like what stress does to your body. My gosh, it's wild. It's wild. And if you don't have a way to relieve your stress or like relax, even like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I know for me personally, whenever I'm feeling very stressed out, I will do something to try to relax and I'll be like, okay, I'm good. And then I'm like, my body's like, no, you're still very much stressed out. Literally, when I left my last job, it's just now, a year later, that I'm finally having some of those awful symptoms relieved. I was literally diagnosed with an immuno, oh my gosh, what's it called? An autoimmune disease. It took me a second there. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and I was considered immunocompromised. I was literally getting so violently sick, really, really. I was diagnosed with asthma, and I was getting, I had pneumonia within 90 days. I had it 3 times, and I had to go have chest X-rays done. I had all this wild stuff happen to me, because my body was literally there's that phrase. I don't know if you've heard this. You probably have. It's like if you don't rest, your body will decide to rest for you. It'll pick it. It's your body has a way of telling you what it needs. And your body was telling you, get me in a dark room and let me sleep.
Yeah, because you know what it was doing is that my brain was trying to protect me.
Yes.
Because my brain was like, okay, you're going to feel like this because we don't want you to go and get yelled at. And if you think about it like this, I'm trying to think of not just a human being, just let's say a dog being traumatized, right? You can see more physically when a dog is traumatized. They're shaking, they're barking, they're moving away, if you see a stray dog, you don't know what that owner before them did, right? And then you try to go up to them and they're just shaking, right? So I felt like that's how I felt internally, is that when I would walk into that office, I felt so much anxiety and I'm just it's like I'm putting myself into a position just be in pain. It's like I'm putting myself in a shock thing or whatever. So I think my brain knows that I get scared. What am I gonna get today? I think that's what my brain shuts down.
It's the constant fight or flight. Your body is constantly in the state of am I gonna stay and fight or am I gonna run away?
Yeah.
And that's a stress response. That's a trauma response.
It's a freeze. Yeah, freeze is my biggest one.
Yeah. So I think that's a huge indicator of a toxic environment that you need to get yourself out of and away from, is if you are waking up every day feeling that sick feeling in your tummy, the anxiety of oh my God, what is today going to bring? That was the thing that I mean, I'm sure you feel this now that you work for yourself.
Yeah.
And you have clients, but you manage your day and your time. You're responsible for how your day looks. And I know I feel this in my job now. I have a lot more autonomy. I have a lot more sense of I feel like I've stepped away from the world that we came from and found an environment that better fits how I want my day to look. And I don't feel that way ever. I don't wake up feeling oh my God. Now, I mean, every once in a while, if I have something that I'm working on and I'm oh my God, this is stressful. But on my worst day, I have never on my worst day in my current job, I have never felt the way that I felt on my worst day at my old job. You know what I mean? So it's if you're in an environment where you are waking up every day and you are just feeling so beaten down and exhausted and just, how am I going to get, you've got to figure out, it's easier said than done. It's so retrospect is everything, and not everyone has the means or the opportunity or the privilege to just find a new job. People have families, they have obligations. You need insurance that a lot of these big companies provide, benefits, paid time off. There are so many things to consider. You can't just tell somebody, oh, go find a new job that's going to be a better environment.
I hate when people do.
Yeah, it's so much more. And especially in the economy right now, the job searching it's so hard. It's so hard. I have so many friends who either are unemployed because they were laid off or they chose to walk away from jobs. And they've been unemployed for a year or longer because they cannot find a job to replace what they had. Even me, I was looking for a new job for I think 2 years before I actually found one that met what I was looking for. It was so hard just to even get an interview. What I'm trying to say is that it's not as easy as it sounds to just find a new job that's going to be better. But when you're in it, I think for a sense of what you're validation, what you're experiencing is not normal and not how it should be. And if you're in a toxic work environment, it's not necessarily on you to fix it. I think a lot of people who feel things as heavily as you and I feel things, we also have this sense of this could be so much better. Like, these are all the things that we could be doing to make not as stressful. Like what you were saying about, like, I have this button to give me a couple of extra seconds after my calls.
Oh yeah, I was going into that and then we completely abandoned that.
But like you even said, you were like, that should be time that I could be using, like, as a human to regroup and take a breath. You're right. That is what that should be for. When you're a cog in the machine, it's not as simple as that.
Think about it. You're like bringing that energy from that previous call into the second call. So it's like you're not really being your best self because your brain is still on top of the other call.
Yeah.
Which is not good.
Yeah. And not everyone can just be like, all right, on to the next one, done. All right, on to the next. Like, not everyone can do that. I mean, I don't know many people who can. Yeah. So
I think we need a part 2 here. I think at this point
we didn't even scratch the surface, Justine.
Yeah, I know. I think, like, guys, this is going to be a part 1 because we are still not even like, we can talk so much more about this particular topic, honestly. We didn't even get to the part where I was talking about stories. So there's going to be a part 2. That would be, you have to wait another week for it. Sorry, guys. But yeah, we're going to end this episode here. And now we're going to go work on part 2.
Yeah. Thanks for having me as your co-host.
Of course, you're going to be co-host again soon.
Yeah.